morning, everyone. So happy to see you. So happy to be here with you. So let's start with meditation. So take your attention inside. And today, let's just do a heart-centered meditation because it's such a beautiful day, at least here in Oregon. I don't know how it is for everybody else, but it's really sunny and beautiful. And it's like the third day in a row like this. So it's really ecstatic outside for us. So take your attention inside to your heart. And we're going to do the new version of Ho'oponopono, having taken out the forgiveness part, because that was put in when the Christians came to Hawaii. And so instead, we just say, thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. And that pretty much covers everything. So we're going to say that into our heart center and feel just like when you drop a stone into a clear pond and the waves radiate outward. We're just going to say Ho'oponopono into that field of our heart-centered awareness and allow that to expand. So breathe into your heart center right in the middle of your chest. And say to yourself, thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Over and over. And just allow that to permeate your field of being and experience whatever arises in you. So we're going to do same. And let's just do that for a few minutes. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. And whenever your mind wanders, just bring it back to this heart-centered awareness. No reason to be critical. All of our minds wander. Just allow it to happen, and as soon as you notice, come back. It's okay if your mind changes the order of these three things. No problem. So we feel everybody coming into the same energetic page. And there seem to be a fair number of questions this morning. So we welcome your questions as you're ready to come back to this field. How may we serve this morning? David and Maggie, go ahead, unmute yourselves. Anything, Brenda?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Here we go.
Good morning.
Good morning. So happy to see you guys in white.
So I have a question about the, what's it? Ho'oponopono, sorry.
Ho'oponopono.
So I get the I love you, I get the thank you, and I appreciate the forgiveness piece dropping off. But the I'm sorry also sounds very Christian based. And, you know, I don't have a huge history with Hawaii or, but I've spent a fair amount of time there over the years. And my experience, at least on the island I visit, is, you know, that they really take the aloha spirit seriously. And it is, I love you, thank you. We appreciate that we live in paradise. So I don't get the I'm sorry bit.
So the I'm sorry covers everything that goes wrong.
Mm.
It is a way of taking responsibility, even though you don't know what part you're responsible for, which is in a way, the only sane way to witness difficulty in your life is to understand that when things go wrong, there is some self-responsibility, maybe. But if we approach every difficulty as though it is a self-responsibility, looking for the self-responsibility, we can't go wrong. And if we approach everything as if it's somebody else's fault, then we are building this crystallization around us more and more and more, so that the feedback we get from our environment is going through something very skewed. You know, this protection, blame thing. And the antidote to that is to take responsibility for everything. And then if you start from that perspective, there is the potential for a clarity to arise about what's really happening, because there is a willingness to be wrong. And whenever there is a willingness to take negative feedback, then there is a possibility for growth. If there's not a willingness to see the truth, which is the same as saying, I'm going to take responsibility, and so this is how we see it.
Mm-hmm.
That there has to be some mechanism, because if you just say, okay, I'm just going to live in the positive and I'm only going to do good, then how are you going to keep from judging yourself when it doesn't work out?
Right.
How are you going to keep from self-destruction with self-hatred when things don't work out? If you don't build something into the system that gives you an out, that gives you a mechanism to understand what's truly going on. So you have to build it bigger than just the bright side of life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I see that.
You have to build in a response to the darkness, because all parts are welcome. And darkness isn't really the right word, it's contrast. Contrast is the word, because in certain contexts, everything is good and everything is bad. and we'll go a little bit further in that. Some people are born into what we would call a God realm, in that they have everything that a person could want at their fingertips, and they have an internal state that is quite nice. And there is nothing that they want to change about anything. And so that's like a God realm, and you can be in that for a long time, but there's no challenge to make you grow. And it has a kind of inertia to it, that state. So is that good or bad? So everything is a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
And if all parts are going to be welcome, then we have to welcome in the contrast, because contrasting experience by and large is what we grow from. The feedback that we don't necessarily welcome is, if you look at your life, that's what's had the most powerful impact in some ways. The very beautiful experiences do too, but the ones that really, completely take us down and remake us, those are the ones that we end up in the final analysis being really grateful.
Yes.
Grateful that those things happened, because they changed us in a way that made us a bigger person by breaking us open. That's what heartbreak is, the opportunity to break open and become more of who you are. So we are really grateful for that question, because it is important to understand that spiritual practice is about taking in everything that happens. And just because you have negative thoughts or negative experience or anything that you would rather not have happen in your life, that doesn't make you a bad person or worthy of rejection, or your experience necessarily worthy of rejection, but deeper looking, and deeper feeling. Because it is our feeling essence that often gets overlooked or overrun by our response to the necessity of participation in the rewards and punishment world outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that we cultivate our feeling nature beyond that world, so that we're not consumed by it as we enter it, most of us in a daily way.
Mm-hmm.
We hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I have a question.
You're welcome, David. Hi.
Hi. So one thing I just want to acknowledge is that I'm coming into today's meeting with a little bit of sadness after having a conversation with one of my family members about my mom's care. So I'm just letting you know that I'm coming from that. But I got a message last night in my dreams that it would be helpful if we came to today's session with questions. Was that your doing?
Not consciously, but
Sure.
we're a lot bigger than that, so who knows?
All right. Now I completely forgot my question. Actually, I do remember it. So we've talked a little bit about the blueprint that we come into the world with. I don't know if blueprint's the exact word, but
Blueprint is the word.
okay. So we come into the world with a blueprint for what we want to accomplish in this life, I'll say. Maybe you can say it better. And I'm wondering if when we're first of all, how do we figure out what that purpose is? But also, if we're living in alignment with that purpose, does that mean we're moving through the world with relative ease? And when we're going against that blueprint, we experience frustration and maybe dis-ease.
Well, looking for validation of blueprint in the outside world is a little bit difficult. It's mixing. The outside world is not made to validate your blueprint.
Mm.
The outside world is what it is, and it's ever changing. And so we can say that there is some karma is involved in blueprint. So here's what happens when a person dies. When a person dies, they go through a review process with their blueprint that they came in with and with the life that has been recorded inside them of everything that happened while they were here. And there's a sort of, I don't know, just an examination. And in the experience of the expansion into the all that is, that happens to each person at death, as they view this blueprint and what they did, there is no spirit experience of self-rejection. It's more like looking at a mathematical problem and balancing the equations and coming up with the next blueprint. It's not an issue of judgment. It's more of a, it's kind of like gravity. These laws of nature, there are natural laws to the logic of love and how it operates in the multiverse. And and to look at it as a blueprint, when we think of blueprint, we think of a flat piece of paper that has squares in it or, drawings in it. Well, you have to understand that the blueprint is not only not exactly imaginable from a three-dimensional reality, it's certainly not a flat thing that exists. It's multidimensional. And so I don't know if we shared with you, Rebecca had a blueprint dream a number of years ago, where in this dream, there was this huge building, but it was like the painting of a building, because at a certain point, it just kind of faded out as though the drawing wasn't complete. Mm-hmm. And this happened in all sides and dimensions, but it also extended beyond the visual field at the same time, as things in dreams can. And so this building had all these layers and rooms and hallways and doors, and she walked into one door, and there was a play happening, and she was the central character. And as she walked in, she could feel like it was like walking into a vacuum that kind of pulled you in like that. And then this thing started to unfold, and she was like, I don't really want to be here, because it wasn't that much fun. And so she kind of backed out before everything had closed behind her and was back in the hallway. And I was like, phew, glad I didn't have to do that. And so, she went to a different floor in a different room, tried the same thing, and had a kind of similar experience, but totally different. And as that was beginning, she was like, no, I don't want to be here either. And so she sucked herself out of the room. And that happened about 4 times. And then she woke up very confused about that dream. And the understanding came over time that was a blueprint dream. We come in with a whole series of potential experiences that we are naturally drawn toward. And as we resonate with these experiences, we learn and grow in them. And the way they express themselves can be reflective of the life we're living. For example, we'll take the death of someone close. You know, when someone close to you dies, that is definitely something that's in your blueprint. But how you respond in that death, in that the time leading up to it, and the participation in that event has everything to do with how you react to it afterwards. So, you know, if you do well in that circumstance, for example, participating in the life of a parent as they near death and, you know, really caring for them and trying to make the experience as beautiful as possible for everyone involved, you know, that has a certain kind of outcome in your internal being. And another outcome is if the person dies alone, very sad, forlorn, forsaken, feeling abandoned, then your connection to them and your reaction to that death is a totally different experience. But both of those exist in the potential of your blueprint. The only thing in the blueprint is that that will happen. So how it happens, you know, and this is the realm of free will. So it's the whole question of predestination versus free will. If we use our free will to attempt to align ourselves, we say align ourselves with the blueprint, but it's really aligning ourselves with the divine source of the all that is, which is beyond our capacity to language to you, but not beyond the feeling sense of a human being. But that feeling sense has to be cultivated and we'll say cultivated very deeply for most people for some quantitative amount of time, quantitative and qualitative amount of time for that source experience to be secure in any way. And it's like using the word secure is like saying secure in infinity. You know, there is no such thing as security in infinity. There is no such thing as our language just cannot contain any part of the experience. And this is why all we can do is point. Love, peace, joy, gratitude, and that which is beyond. That is what we are pointing to. It is that which is beyond, which contains everything, every frequency of experience that a human being can participate in is, of course, contained in the all that is. And when we align ourselves with our personal being to that source energy, then there is the step of allowing ourselves to be used for the expression of the whole. And that, in one sentence, is what allowing is. And so service becomes a critical component to our alignment. And it is through service, for example, the example we gave about a parent's death and serving that as well as you possibly can, given the ways you're called to it. And in family dynamics, it can get very complex. But if you are serving, then there is a certain confidence you can have in we don't exactly want to say the fruits of your labors because it's not linear like that and it's not rewards and punishment based. it's confidence in karma. That's how you can think of it, that you are allowing yourself to be used for what you perceive as the highest in the moment. That's the best we can say it. And that's alignment. So in a way, it's simple. You can work on that alignment from two directions. That alignment is what every form of meditation is about. And doing that a couple times a day, really cultivating your connection with your divine inner, gives you the capacity to really have bigger choices, bigger awareness of the choices that are available as your life unfolds before you in how to serve best. But having an attitude of service is really, really helpful in cultivating alignment. And sometimes, if we're not healthy in a given moment for whatever reason, sometimes the biggest service we can do is to ourselves, to get ourselves into a position where we can serve again. Sometimes that's the highest service we can do for our own life potential. And then the service is about, really sitting with what it means to cultivate our health and what is required from us to make that a priority. So situation is very, very important. We give what we have, not what we think we should give. And we can look at it a little bit like this. In service, the giving is always, the quantity is always a little bit more than we think, like a little bit more than we think we can afford. And that stretches us. Mm. And that's pretty much all we have to say about that right now. Did that conversation bring up more questions or answer your question?
No, that's great. That was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. How may we serve further? Cliflin. Hi, good to see you.
Hi everyone. I'd like to pick up on Maggie's question. I've lost a little bit of it, given that I was focusing on David's question and response, right. But I'll try to go back to it because it was so right on in terms of things that I'm dealing with, and your response was really right on in terms of things I'm dealing with. And I think the way to get into it is that you talked about having negative experiences. And I've been thinking about, I've been reviewing my life, decades, and those decades have been punctuated with negative experiences, as well as many, many, many positive experiences. But I've been trying to kind of deal with how I have learned from negative experiences, and I've come up with the conclusion that I haven't learned very much from the negative experiences because they seem to be happening over and over again. And so I'm thinking that I'm not learning my lessons. And I was talking to a friend, Gwendolyn, about this, and you talked about that these experiences change us, they break us open. It's an opportunity to become more of who we are. And yes, they do break us open. But I don't seem to move beyond them happening again and again. And so I was saying to Gwendolyn that I don't think it's a lesson that I can learn. And that I think I am going to have to accept that this particular lesson, which is usually that I get snookered by people very easily. It just happens over and over and over again. And she said something to me that was very interesting, and I'd like your feedback on it. I had to write it down because it's so slippery. And she said, maybe it's time for you to accept that this is your life and to turn rightful anger into courage. So are lessons always learned? Or are there some lessons that we just don't learn because of who we are? And we're going to have to confront them over and over and over again? And if so, how do we come to peace with that? Or should we just try harder and harder to learn the lesson?
Well, that's a
I
very,
can't go back to school. I have all
yes.
that I need.
Well, this is a very interesting question. Let's rephrase it to make sure we really understand. So you feel that you are not learning the lesson of, really, we would say that the way you're expressing it, you feel like you should have a different level of discrimination when it comes to certain arenas in your life where you feel that you have repeatedly been taken advantage of. Does that make sense? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting because, we don't know a lot about your life. We know some about the recent history of your life, but not a lot. But our observation would be that if you were asked, you would say that you have not had a life of suffering or a life of wanting for needs to be fulfilled. Would you agree with that?
I've been very blessed in my life.
Yes. So we didn't want to go that far, but we would agree with that. So that means that in these arenas where you have been taken advantage of, it has not been to the point where it has compromised your life experience in terms of making you feel like your life is less than. You feel your life is blessed. Despite these.
In some arenas.
Yes. So we would say.
In other arenas, no.
Okay. We would say that there is an allowing in you that because you fundamentally refuse to give up your belief in the goodness of people, there is an allowing in you that people who are not so good can take advantage, because you resolutely will not give up your belief in the goodness of people. And that is a conscious decision. And what do you think about that? How does that feel?
It brings a knot to my stomach.
Interesting. Well, here's what we're going to say. All people are a mix of contradictions. including ourselves. A human being is capable. There is the potential for a human being to behave in any way. And in the acknowledgement of that is the acknowledgement that all parts are welcome. At the same time, we use Ho'oponopono as a sort of discrimination in our lives to align us to that which is love, that which is gratitude, and that which is neither of those. And for that part, we're sorry in advance. Because the truth of it is that we are all one. We all come from the same source. We all come from the same source, which is the potential for every experience. And each of us has a different, unique blueprint through which that experience, that source energy filters into our expression. And we are a blend of predestination and free will. And so there is a decision you could make to be snookered no more, which would mean that you would have to be very discriminating about every relationship that you get involved with in a certain way that is repugnant to you. You do not want to decide if somebody's good or bad, or look for the bad parts. You don't want to use your energy that way. And that's very deep in you. And we're not going to judge that. We're just going to say that's deep in you, that wish to see everyone as divine. And to assume that everyone has your highest, best interests in mind. We're just pointing that out. We're not saying it's good or bad. Clearly, it serves you in some very important ways in that you don't have to carry around that fear that you're being taken advantage of.
But I do carry that fear all the time.
So maybe look at that belief that everyone is inherently good and has your highest best, because this is what we would wish the world to be like. So you either drop the fear and allow the consequences, or you re-examine the quality of that belief and its viability in your life. It has not harmed your quality of life. From what you told us, that you have a lot to be grateful for and you have never wanted for things. And this is the razor's edge. Really, this is a beautiful demonstration of the razor's edge that we all walk on as we examine our internal processes, and we see those which serve and those which maybe we want to examine further. Or we can say, no, I am going to concentrate, I'm going to allow the belief that people are inherently good and nobody's trying to take advantage of me. Now, we live in a capitalist world, so that may not be an appropriate belief system when it comes to economics. Because there's a kind of economic social Darwinism in play with capitalism, survival of the fittest. In a certain way, unless people are really, really cultivating their capacity to serve the highest at all times. And so somewhere in there is a decision to be made about faith. faith in humanity. And there's one that you've made that may or not have been conscious, that human beings are basically good and that they are trying to do good. That's what we see is the belief system behind the allowing oneself to be snookered.
Well, is that, you talked about this deep belief that I have that's almost beyond my control, I guess. Is it that I come in to this world with that belief embedded in my structure?
Well, we don't know. It's part of your matrix of belief is all that we can say, is that it's our observation that that's part of your matrix of belief, whether it came from your peers and elders after you arrived or in your wiring before you arrived. That's a trickier question, and is it valuable to have the answer to that?
Yeah, because I'm just thinking about an experience that I had last weekend, and I'll be brief, but it's a very tangible, concrete experience, and it was like beyond belief. But I had 2 brake lights out. I was stopped by a policeman, so I went into Pep Boys because I thought it'd be faster than going to my mechanic. And a friend said, "Well, have them check your fuse to make sure it's not a fuse, and then go on to the brake lights." When I went in, I dropped the car off, came back. I thought it would have been taken care of. And the guy said, "Oh, it's much, much more complicated. It might be the wiring, and therefore it would take a long time, and ergo more expensive." And to make a long story short, and a long time there, I was there for about 2 hours, and the story kept changing. "Oh, it's much more complicated." And I kept saying, "Well, I've been here for a long time. What's the charge going to be? Are you charging for the time or whatever?" And the story changed then from it's much more complicated than just brake lights to, and our charge is $120 an hour for labor, to finally, that'll be $30 for 2 brake lights. And I felt like I was in the process of being snookered, that they thought that they were going to do something much more complicated. And that the only reason they didn't was that I was there asking them questions and was on top of things. And they realized that they weren't gonna snooker me. But it was like right before my eyes, they were trying to get away with something. And I just couldn't believe it. I just left shaking my head that they actually thought that they were going to get away with something. And it was a very simple question. Situation. They could have checked the brake lights at the beginning of that 3 hours that I was at Pep Boys and would have figured out that it was just brake lights. But they kept me there that long to see if they could get something else out of me. So did my belief in the goodness of those people
Well, actually,
turn the situation into
you
they
didn't.
were better than they?
This was the opposite. You were expecting that they were trying to snooker you,
Yeah,
and looking quite astutely to that possibility.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's the opposite of the question you asked us.
Well, it is, but that's what when you said that, and that's what's confusing, because you said, "Well, I believe in the goodness of people, but yet because of my decades of experience, I'm on the lookout for it."
So now that you're on the lookout for
I
it,
may believe it. I mean, we're all, there's these dichotomies. I believe, might believe in the goodness of people, but I'm on the lookout now.
well, so you're now in reaction to the fear of being snookered. That's what we would say. This is not about expressing the belief and allowing yourself to be snookered. That's a very different thing, which is what we thought you said in the beginning of the conversation. This is like, And we would say that going to Pep Boys is probably not the best place. You know, we would encourage you, if you don't know a lot about cars, to make friends with a mechanic so you can trust someone.
Yeah.
That is one of the known arenas, especially for elderly women, to get taken advantage of, because, you know, we're known to not be good at cars. And so, you know, to put yourself in that situation and ask the right questions and do well is, you know, that's all fine, but that's not the question you originally asked.
Okay.
So we don't, you know, we think you're quite cautious about being snookered now. So that's a very different thing. And that is having learned the lesson, we would say. So, but is the lesson fear? The lesson is not fear, the lesson is discrimination. You know, if you're putting yourself in a situation where you know you're at risk, you have to pay attention. And you did. And you do. So this is not a lesson that hasn't been learned. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you're right. Pep Boys probably wasn't a good example because it was fairly minor.
Yeah, but you took care of yourself. You did fine. I mean, nobody was hurt. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for your question. We totally enjoyed that conversation. How may we serve further? We're so happy to be here. Oh, and happy Easter, by the way. We celebrate all celebrations. We believe in celebration itself. Hmm. Hmm. Yes.
Can we go back to blueprint?
Yes.
We read our blueprint and free will. And are we unconsciously actively participating in our blueprint? And I guess this does dovetail on the question that was asked earlier. And does it become uncomfortable if we move out of it? Or is that just another lesson that we're supposed to receive, or others around us are to experience in this incarnation? Obviously it's not conscious effort of finding our blueprint. I was told once, or I read in a book, that if we knew what our purpose was upon entering this plane, we'd work so hard to quickly reach it to get back to a space of unconditional love and light, right? We would, so our life work is in the experiences that we have that others may also need to experience, in finding that. So if there's a different understanding, I'm open to that. But just in finding that and making sure we experience that path.
So we're not exactly sure what the question is. The question is really, you know, what is blueprint? What is alignment? And what's the goal? We'd kind of break it down to those three things. Okay, so blueprint. Blueprint is the set of possibilities that we are born into in this life. And it is reflective of our past lives and what we hope our future to be. We can put it like that. And so we've said over and over that alignment with divinity and expressing the blueprint through that alignment is the goal. And so the reason we say that's the goal is because the real goal is living from conscious awareness, which is beyond. It's living from the beyond, that which is beyond love, peace, joy, gratitude, and contains everything, the all of the all that is. And so the goal is establishing ourselves in that. Since that's the stated goal, which you put in slightly different words, yes, if we knew how to go to that directly, that would be, is the highest form of expression of our blueprint. And there are great saints who have sat down and said, who is this I that's asking the question? And gone straight to that source and never left. And there are people who've worked hundreds of lifetimes and not had that experience. So all of us are somewhere in between. And that path is completely viable for those for whom it's viable. And, you know, those people have a blueprint that works. They just go, what is this I? And fall into the infinite knowing. And then they point to that as the path, because that path worked for them. For those of us who that path hasn't exactly worked yet, we keep it in mind. We do it as much as we can, as much as we're able, and we experience what we experience. Now, do we condemn ourselves and judge ourselves as somehow wrong or bad because we don't come into that ultimate experience of awareness immediately? I don't think so. The very desire to know God is in itself a huge gift. Allow yourself to take in that statement. The very desire to know source energy, to merge with our divinity, which we already are, that very desire is a huge gift, because that puts us on the path to connection to our highest, deepest. And we understand that having experienced that connection for 1 second will completely change our life experience forever. And so we understand that dedicating ourselves to that experience is completely worthwhile, because all suffering comes from not experiencing that. And in a certain way, all benefit comes from experiencing that. So this is the call to discovering our inner and once having any taste of that, we serve that forever. Because we are forever changed in that union, in the awareness of the power of that union. And it's not about understanding, and it's not exactly about feeling. It's about knowing. And that knowing is something that is so deeply human and so deeply source at the same time as to be completely life-changing. And it is the faith in that that drives our inner work. So there is a way in which we could be tempted to feel that we're victims of our blueprint. And that's if we throw the whole weight of our lives into the idea that they're predestined. Then our free will amounts to nothing. Now, anybody sitting in this call has already dealt with that, and they're here because of free will, which means actively engaging blueprint. You can't be here unless you're actively engaging your blueprint. It just is not possible. And so you hold to the faith that that connection to source is available to each and every one of us, every single moment. And that the more moments we spend in attempting connection, allowing connection with that source, the more likely it is that we will experience that flash of insight that becomes the driver of our service, that takes us beyond what human life has to offer. Which is not to downgrade the quality of human life. The beauty that can be experienced here is beyond imagination. But there is a lot beyond that becomes a new beginning. And beyond that becomes a new beginning. And beyond that becomes a new beginning. And it is unfathomable how much growth is possible for a human being. And it's not exactly that our blueprint changes. We know we've told you the story of the car accident that Rebecca had where, she could have been killed and instead found herself standing looking at the crushed car in front of her. That accident was part of the blueprint. How it played out was a combination of awareness and certainly angelic intervention. And these things can and do happen as we work deeper and deeper. So our blueprint is there, but how we respond to it is our choice. We welcome further questions. How may we serve further? Hmm. Andrew? Okay. Hmm. We have been finding this conversation to be really inspirational for us, and we hope it's working in the same way for you. That there is an ever deepening connection to self with a capital S. Hmm. We're so grateful to be here with you. It's just such a blessing, the feeling that we are sharing. Hmm. So, discomfort in the face of inner work is a fairly common experience. You know, the experience of I'm not getting it. And then there are waves where, wow, I really feel it. I'm getting it. I've gotten it. This is it. And then there are other waves that tell us the opposite. And this is all fine and as it should be. Because it's a process. A human being is actually a process because there are waves informing us all the time. You know, just from studying medicine was really an eye-opening experience for Rebecca because the human body in its complexity is so magnificent that the only way human beings have figured out to try to understand this complexity is to divide it into all these different ologies, neurology, endocrinology, pulmonology, nephrology. I mean, every organ has an ology around it. And so in this attempt to understand the whole, there has been this great separation because each human being can only understand one ology. And so if they don't communicate with each other, and very often they don't, because just understanding their own ology takes all their mental complexity, all their mental integration goes to understanding one organ system. And so these different doctors really don't communicate with each other. And so it's as though the body has been split up into these unique ologies that are not understood as a whole. And so it's through the holistic physicians that actually try to focus on something deeper, which is what health itself is, which is really the driver, possibly should be the driver of any medical intervention, should be the understanding of what health is and how we're going to get there from here. But with all these different ologies, it's more like, how can we manipulate things so this ology looks like it's working perfectly? And so in that attempt to do that, there's been a sort of disintegration of the understanding of what it is to be a human body. And so we don't know where this discussion is coming from or going, but it just kind of floated through and we wanted to share it. Because health is about so much more than any particular ology. It's the gestalt of everything. And then the understanding of what health itself is, what that looks like, and then the reintegration of everything into the whole that would make, health really something, health care about something other than disease management, which is really what they should call allopathic medicine, because it has nothing to do with health, not even a definition. Just adding that for whatever reason, we don't know. We hope that serves someone. But that's an observation we've made over time. And we would say from that observation that as you engage your own health, it's likely important that you have at least one practitioner who has that point of view, who helps you integrate what your health choices are so that they are really aimed toward health rather than disease management, that they really have some goal of becoming healthier rather than just, accepting decline as the inevitable result of aging. It is our experience and our understanding that it's quite possible to walk up to death in a state of health, physical health, that deterioration is not necessary unless we believe it. And our matrix of belief is that we must disintegrate on our way up to death. And that's not true, just simply not true. If we keep our attention on health and we do everything that we can, then a lot of it still has to do with our blueprint. We can never, just walk away from our blueprint, but we can begin to understand where we have leverage in bettering our health inside our human body. And we're not talking just about the physical body. Health is all inclusive of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So all of that can be in balance and integrated up to the moment that we leave. Leaving doesn't require that we be particularly sick in our physical being. It's just that we reach the moment where our death is supposed to happen. And if we can do that consciously, imagine just allowing yourself to dissolve into being. It's been done. There is no reason that anyone in this call couldn't do that. Cultivating that which is beyond is cultivating that which is beyond. The more we do it, the more we become it. And the other thing is that what we really mean to say about blueprint is that the only way truly out of here is to transcend your blueprint. But that which is unknown cannot be transcended. So discovery of blueprint, alignment with blueprint, transcendence of blueprint are really all the same process. And we'll tell you, Rebecca started from, I don't want to know anything about any stinking blueprint. I don't want to be stuck in a blueprint. Let me out of here. That was her initial response to blueprint. So fortunately, that didn't last too long, but we understand that reaction too. Because, you know, we want to feel like we have free will about everything that happens to us. And the more we know our blueprint, the more free will we have. The more we are in alignment, the more power our free will has. So it looks like we're coming into time for meditation. So let's do that. We hope we haven't stirred things so much that we can't really enjoy the depth of our meditation. So we'll use Ho'oponopono as we did in the beginning, and this time we'll invite the connection to our central channel, starting at the tip of our tailbone And we'll just say Ho'oponopono into every energy center, and then we'll begin the transmission. So starting at the tip of our tailbone, feel the energy begin to gather in your awareness. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Gently allow your attention to come up below your belly button. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Allow it to rise up into your heart. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Allow it to rise up into your throat. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I love you. Allow it to rise into your third eye, behind and between your eyebrows. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Out the top of your head, visualize a huge flower. Thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. To the top of your aura, thank you. I love you, and I'm sorry. Continue at your own pace, and we'll begin the transmission. Thank you so much. Feels like way too soon to end meditation, but we are bound by the clock on Sunday. We love you so much. We're so grateful that you've come. Thank you. Till next time. So much love.